Drive Home with John Perlman
on 702. Let's walk the talk.
Well, taxi fares increasing today, I think, in Gauteng and certainly down in the Western Cape. I don't think anyone is surprised. They may well be dismayed, but there is widespread understanding that the fuel price is going through the roof, and it's going up again in the middle of this week. So let's talk about this, get some perspective from the taxi industry. Theo Malele is the spokesperson for the National Taxi Alliance. Mr. Malele, welcome and thanks very much for your time. We may get to the numbers later, but I want to start with something a little different. Did you, as the industry, have any opportunity to negotiate with government about whether there could be a taxi industry specific measure taken to try and mitigate the effects of the fuel increase? I know that we've got a general countrywide vehicle agnostic thing around the fuel levy to mitigate it. But was there ever in play any possibility of something specific for taxis?
Well, good afternoon to you and to our listeners out there. Well, we haven't had any luck in that aspect. We are very hopeful. We were actually hopeful that we would be given a hearing a couple of months ago, excuse me, but unfortunately that has never come to fruition.
So you'd approach them and say, listen, this thing is coming. We transport millions of South Africans every single day. Can we sit down and talk? If I've understood you right, you made an approach, no meeting materialized?
Well, you would remember that, a couple of years ago, we've had a couple of marches where we, placed our grievances before authorities. And one of them, as a sore thumb, was the fact that the taxi industry, being the majority public transport mover, has not, seen any support in terms of, a subsidization.
Yes.
And every minister that comes in, they will come with promises to say, no, I will be looking at this. I'm coming with changes. And, it's just a pie in the sky. It has never materialized.
Mr. Malele, how are you going to benchmark this increase as an industry? Because do you link it to a specific top number for what fuel costs? Do you link it to a percentage increase? In other words, I think what people are wondering is prices go up, in people's perception, quickly they take longer to come down. What would trigger a reduction?
Look, we, like any other business, I would actually throw the same question at you and ask if ever the price of bread, comes down every time, fuel prices drop.
Yes.
And your answer would be a no. And this is primarily because the fact that, commodities go up, we service vehicle, the maintenance of this vehicle still stays high, and we are unfortunately not able to make such adjustments unless government comes to play. Only then can we consider talking about the reduction of prices. Remember that the taxi industry is charging charity fares, not market related, knowing for a fact that we transport the products of the poor. We try by all means not to make these increases harshly. As you would realize that many businesses adjust their prices on an annual basis. So we at times just stay years on end without, making such adjustments. But currently, we have no option but to begin to look at ways of surviving as well as a business. And, having said that, John, the last time we made these adjustments was in the month of March, and the price changes were effected from the 1st of April. So at this point, we haven't set and locked points as to what kind of margins will we be looking at after having looked at what the input cost, that is fuel, is actually affecting our margin by which percentage.
But Mr. Malele, to say that you're running a business based on charity fares is surely stretching the point. I mean, you are running business because it is a business, and the fierce competition for routes, the huge market for and desire to get taxi operating licenses suggests that while this business may not be as lucrative as you like, it is a lucrative business, surely.
Yes, look, not lucrative. It looks lucrative from the ordinary person out there.
Yes.
Our markup, ranges between 30 and 33.33% of cost. So we are very squeezed in terms of our profit margin.
And just a final question: Is there a price at which you might start losing customers? Or is this a situation where people are either going to work, going to school, going to university, going to look for a job, going to visit relatives? There's probably 4 dozen reasons why people are boarding taxis. Do you fear that there's a point at which people will stop traveling with you? Or is this a situation where people really don't have a choice?
Now, look, the ridership has seriously declined. More especially after the introduction of e-hailing that has been in the country, illegally, and only just the previous year was it regulated. We have had serious decline in terms of ridership. Well, we do not fear much that we will actually lose clientele, yes, because we know we service in most cases the last mile. And we also go into places that are difficult to can access by these other modern transport systems.
Thank you so much, Theo Malele. Very interesting indeed. National Taxi Alliance Spokesperson. I mean, a question for you, or perhaps for members of your family or friends who make extensive use of taxis. Is there a point where this becomes unaffordable? Not to say you'll never use a taxi again, but you might say, well, I used to use one 5 times a week. I'm cutting it to 3. Is there any flexibility in this at all? Give us a call. 011 883 0702.
News.
Experts.
Analysis.
Where things stand.
What you need to know. Drive home with John Perlman
On 702.